Hello, and welcome to episode 9 of Creative Collaboration Conversations with Veronica and Jillian. I'm Jillian, and I'm here with my co host, Veronica. Or maybe you're on
Hello.
this side. Are you on this side? Hi, Veronica. Yeah.
I see you on this side.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Hey, Jillian. How are you today?
Hello. I'm doing okay. I've got half a cup of coffee left. All things considered, pretty good.
So I finished my coffee. I switched to water, and
Mm,
I'm getting ready for today's topic because I must say it's a very important one for businesses. I can't say it's one of my favorite though, and probably
mm,
a lot of business owners struggle with these ones. So
yeah.
today we're going to talk about finance and more precisely about the price structure, about the tools, sales, and basically client retention, everything around the financial part of a business and how we approach
Hmm.
it. And I think it
Hmm.
should be a very interesting conversation considering that we do come from two different continents, two different
Yes.
approaches. I'm very curious about, I had to adapt my way of pricing and working, moving from Romania to the Netherlands when I opened my business here. But
Mm,
for you, I think
hmm.
it was even more impactful because the
Yeah.
US taxation is different from the Dutch one.
Hmm. Oh, sure.
So
Yes.
but before
Yeah.
we dive deep into the topic, we do have always a moment where we are sharing something fun. So what happened? Do you have anything to share for this week?
Yeah, so my kind of check-in is I'm super humbled and really excited about. So we, just formally launched our podcast recently, and so the response is so meaningful because you and I have been working on this for quite some time, and now that we're able to share it and starting to get feedback from people is just really humbling. And so one particular person, listener, is a wonderful woman named Katiza, who has written to me, and she has shared it with several other business owners, and some of those people have also reached out to me, and so I've started dialogue and whatnot. It's really excellent. I super appreciate that, so kudos to Katiza.
Thank
And
you.
also I've gotten some requests for new topics already, and to
Amazing.
elaborate on, yeah, on other topics. So there was a request to also elaborate on our kind of tactics and how we go about networking, specifically. So I feel
Mm.
like we maybe like skimmed over that and we maybe jumped further ahead, kind of the power of networking. So it's probably a
Yes.
good idea to revisit and talk about like the foundational pieces of how to do it or how you go about it and how I go about it. So I'm adding that to the list of future topics, and certainly want to invite anybody else to suggest a topic that they would like us to chat about. So
Yeah. Thank
that's
you
my
for
kind of check-in, update, exciting, fun fact extravaganza for today.
yeah. Thank you for that, Katia,
Kat- Katiza, I believe. I think
Katiza.
I'm pronouncing it correctly. Yes, Katiza.
We
Yes. Yeah.
apologize if we do that. But
Yes.
I did get good reactions as well, but not a request for a specific topic. So thank you for that. And I
Yeah.
must say I was not expecting this topic to be asked for, but it's one of my favorite topics, and I do have some ideas how we can make it even more interesting
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
provide more values to our audience. So definitely will should be should we should record that quite quickly, quite soon, and share it.
Yeah, yeah. I added it to our list, so that's stay tuned. That'll be a future episode coming up soon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
excuse me. So, finance. Where should we
Yeah.
start?
So didn't we start? I think we touched on this way back when at our first, well, our only coffee conversation, really, at this point in person, right? But first, because we're going to have a second. So I think we began to touch on this lightly. And I know we've kind of picked at it here and there in just conversations since then. So I'm really quite eager to chat with you and compare notes about this and just, how, I guess, how you think of it. Because let's see. So I guess to me, I think, all right. So the finance piece overall, that's a beast. And so there are a lot of different kind of components of that. But I feel like for this conversation, if we can focus a bit more on like, yeah, how we're structuring kind of our pricing, not necessarily what our pricing is, but how we structure it, and is how, you know, how and why we structure our pricing the way we do, and how that interacts with the client experience or client retention. And then, yeah, any tools or sales techniques and whatnot. Um, so
It's
yeah,
quite
I
a
feel like great. Go
yeah,
ahead, tell us what you
it's a
got.
lot.
Yeah, yeah, it
I,
is.
I think I think it's also what we need to do, and what I want to advise everyone to take into account when it comes to finance is what what's the value market of your service? What's do your
Mm,
um
mm,
so I'm not the one that goes and say see what your competitors are doing and copy or do
mm.
it differently, as you know, and as we showed in every episode of this podcast.
Yep,
Basically
yep,
what we
yep.
are doing here.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be aware what are the prices on the market. And I
Mm-hmm.
think for us as marketeers, especially in the Netherlands, the market is so different because you do have the high end agencies that are charging a very, very high amount.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily because they are delivering better services than the smaller ones, just because they have a brand and this is how it goes, right? You buy a dress from
Mm-hmm.
H&M or from Louis Vuitton, even if it's the same,
Right.
it's a
Right.
big difference, right? That being said, it's not that they are not delivering a good job, the big agencies, but I'm just
Right.
making a very extreme differentiation here so
Example.
people
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
it exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you have the freelancers, and especially a lot of the expat spouse that they are starting their own company, or they were expat spouse and became immigrants, like kind of our
Yeah.
situation, kind of. But
Yes.
what they do, they don't really necessarily need the money or not a big amount, or they just want to re-enter the market. So what they do, they offer a very, very low price. And then you start having an issue in the market because you have good value for a very low price.
Mm.
And then you have good value as well, higher value for an extremely high price. So
Mm.
where should you be? You know? And I
Yeah.
think maybe we should start with this and then we discuss about the price structure, because that's about the positioning of your company, right? And the positioning of your company and the audience you're targeting influence the financial side.
Yeah.
I'm
Geez, I
going
feel
into a
like
different direction, right? I'm sorry
a
for that.
little bit, because yeah, no, a little bit, but I feel like hold on, I have so many things I want to say. It's like, where do I even start? Because so okay, here I go. Pick a thread and go with it. So here's the thread I pulled. So yes, it's so much about your company positioning and all of those things. And also when you mentioned about kind of looking at, you know, educating ourselves about what our
Yeah.
competitors are doing. Those are super valid statements and definitely great suggestions. Um, and then also this idea of some, you know, companies or entities or individuals kind of lowballing things, and how that can skew things, and whatnot. So as you were talking, the first thing that came to mind for me is back when I was first trying to figure out this pricing idea, when I was first growing my 1.0 version of my agency. I'm decided this is my 2.0. So my 1.0, I remember when I was first learning it, I was at the time looking, we were doing some more website related work, which we used to do a lot more of. And now I have a better solution than that, to dealing with websites, which we'll talk about later. It's called collaborating. But anyway, you may have heard of it. Anyhow, okay. So one of the things I noticed or learned pretty quickly in terms of websites, and it was a little puzzling for me at the time, is wow, you can get a website for $500, US market, and you can get one for 50,000. And so when I started
True.
looking at that, you can find examples all over the map. So then I kept
Mm-hmm.
thinking about, okay, so how are we pricing? And so kind of going through that iteration. And then I looked at things like, are we getting, you know, what is it that we're delivering? Are we delivering results? Are we delivering experience? Are we delivering training? Are we delivering just value across the board, and value as determined by who? So these are like all
That's
the
a good point.
questions that
Yeah.
that I grappled with. And so ultimately what I decided to do early on, because I feel like it was one of those things when you just, the analogy, or it's a euphemism, I guess, when I just fell into a bucket. It was like, ooh, look at what I did. Because I wasn't really sure. So to give myself some time to figure things out, I started on retainer model very early on, working with clients. And my thought was, as we're working on something, if we need to add something else, I'm like, it takes so much time to create a proposal in the first place. I don't want to have to go back and do a change order like, oh, it's going to be an extra 45 minutes, or it's going to be two more whatevers, or this, or we actually did 8 posts instead of one, or it just felt very petty. And so for me, I thought, well, why don't we just create a fixed line item? That way, for the client, they have one line in their budget. That's it. That's what it is. They know what to expect, and that's it. And then for me, I know what I can plan on moving forward. So that's why we started on retainer model from the beginning. And it would often allow us, and this is what I would articulate to clients, that it would allow us to front load work in the beginning so we could work on a bunch of things concurrently. Even though in month one or in Q1 or something, we might, I would say, scrape my knuckles. Like we might be borderline, maybe not in the black, or borderline, kind of a little bit of red showing through. But I could then make up for it later. And so to me, it was just always a more efficient way to work on things. So we could, because so many components or facets of a business are related to each other. So that way we could do, one, interview and create a lot of different pieces from that one, as opposed to doing one at a time. Right. So we started working on retainer model straight away. And then I didn't know it at the time that was like, by many people considered to be like the holy grail of setting up your business. It was like recurring. And so that was a pretty nice situation to be in. And then I maintained the clients for many years. It's like a roughly 3 years on average. So anyway, so that's my thought about trying to figure out the $500 to $50,000 websites and how to account for the variety of pricing and all of these things, and then coming back to what would be most effective to a client. Like, do they want to be dealing with all these change orders all the time and feel like they're being nickeled and dimed, or we'll just settle on a price and then we'll work to that number as we move forward. So that's what I did.
I kind of did the same, but they were, as you say, 0.0, there were several versions of it, because the initial product that I had, the service that I was offering, was marketing strategy. So you are getting the strategy, and that's a fixed price. And of course, the price grew because I learned more and I got more confident, and I saw people actually like it and they are happy with it. So that was, I'm doing it for you. And but what I noticed actually after the first year of just doing the strategy, not even a full year, I think half a year into it, everybody loved it, but they start having difficulties implementing it. So
always,
a new part of my business was built at that point, and that was implementation. So we create it, and you either implement it with your team, or we can come and work with your team, or take over and implement, depending on the size of the company. Because the small to medium ones, usually they have a person in charge of the marketing, even if it's not a proper marketeer, but keeps the connections with shareholders, or you know how it is. So depending on how big that company is and their budget, I kind of did the same, and was a fixed price per month, and we still do that, a fixed price per month, and then we do have we define the scope of the project, basically what needs to be achieved in that month. And of course, some months are crazier, some months are a little bit lower. You do need to find the flow, you do need to find how it works, and it's it's not necessarily per month balance, but overall it's balanced. And I do believe in providing value. Actually, we always, this is actually a disadvantage for my company, but an advantage at the same time, because we are always doing a little bit more. So that affects your your income, but also keeps the clients happy. So overall, they will stay longer with you. So so it's an investment, and it's something that is dear to our values. So we're always gonna do that. So I did have the same approach, and instinctively you just go for that. I do want to work with this client more, because the more you work with the client, the better service you can provide, because marketing is not like I'm just going to do one thing and it's done. You do need to
Right.
experiment, you do need to try different things. And there are
Yes.
so many factors, external factors, that we can't control, like the economic
Yep.
situation, the political, what
Yes.
is social, right? That they have a
Mm-hmm.
direct impact on every single business. So it's not like,
Yes.
it doesn't matter what industry, what country you are, like this is the reality. So you can't say, I'm just going to do this, implement it, and just forget about it, because it just doesn't work like that. And this is why I
Yeah,
love
the
marketing, actually.
yeah, it's not one and done. It's not just put
No,
some lipstick on it. It's not that. It's a continual process of testing, building, iterating, testing
exactly.
again, looking at the data, etc.
And
So
actually,
it
we
lends
do.
itself to building long-term relationships. It just does, I think.
Exactly. And when we have an implementation contract set up with the client, I'm saying we're not going to do it for less than 3 months, because it's impossible. You, in
Yeah,
3 months,
of
you are just
course.
getting it, you
Yeah, yeah.
start understanding and trying and failing, if you want, even if I'm not a big
Mm,
fan, but you see what is
mm,
working and what is not working. So,
mm.
yeah, you do have we do still have the just creating the strategy. But if I really look back, I think I had only at the beginning one client doing only the strategy and not implementation or anything
Mm-hmm,
else, or they are project-based
mm-hmm.
clients. But we do have the same
Yeah.
approach, actually, when it comes to that, to just
So have
retainer.
you done so I was going to ask, although you kind of just answered. So it sounds like you have, the fixed price per month is like a retainer model. So it sounds like
Yeah.
you have that in place. And then two other kind of structures would be like a project fee. So I'm going to
Hmm.
deliver X, Y, and Z for A, B, and C or whatever.
Correct. Yeah.
And then also an hourly. So I know some people they'll say, oh, I have a monthly retainer. It's 20 hours at 100 an hour or something like that. So it's a retainer, but it's still hourly. So do you work with an hourly rate for yourself, or do you use that, or have you, or what? I guess I'm curious what you think about that.
I do work. So how we do, I create a team for each project, and
Mm-hmm.
depending, each freelancer or collaborator has a different experience. So of course that influence
Yep.
the hourly rate, or usually they do work on hourly rate. So I do take into account when I'm making the offer or creating the
Yep.
proposal. Okay, so this is what it needs to be done. These are the people. We discuss like what's an average number of hours that you need.
Yep.
Because of course 1 month will be, as you said at the beginning, it's always going to be more work.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a given. And then if you the idea is to manage to get to that balance, right? To just get to a normal medium one, where
Yep. Yep.
it's you automate, you understand better, so you spend less time on different things. So we do keep in mind an average number of hours, because otherwise you can't really put an amount to it. And then each
Yep.
collaborator has a specific hourly rate that we take into
Yep.
account.
Yep.
But I never
Yep.
go and I never sign like these are the amount of hours, this is the
Yep.
retainer. So we do it's
Yep.
a project based. But when we
Yep.
calculate the monthly retainer, actually, we do take into account the hourly rate and amount of hours.
Yep.
How about you?
So hold on. And so do you include your own, like, how do you account for your time, or your work or your time? It could be either, in a client contract. So let's just say there's a contract that's using round numbers for 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, your team is going to be 500 for the expense of your team doing their thing. So there's 500. Like, do you also factor in your own
I
time
do
into that
factor my
contract
own
as well?
time.
Like
Yeah, I do
your own
factor.
internal, like,
Yes.
your own internal rate kind of thing, like for
Yeah.
yourself personally, and like calculate that so that, and so let me ask this, because this is a curious thing about the
Mm-hmm.
difference in at least how I understand and how I see it, coming from the US where I had an S corp to here where they don't recognize, in the Netherlands they don't recognize an S corp. So then had to go through that whole adventure, and so I was told to start off with a ZZP and la la la. So
Yeah.
So my question is, so going back to that same example, so let's just say it was 1,000 and 500 was going to pay your team. Would that other 500 go to you personally, or do you, some of that you keep in for your company? It's like,
You do keep,
you know what I mean?
you need to consider you have so many other costs. So a project, you have the people
Yeah,
that you
sure,
are
sure,
paying,
sure.
but you have the business
Yeah,
administration, but
tool.
you also have
Fine.
the marketing, the sales budget. So you need
Sure, sure,
to
sure.
take all of this into account, and it's not, so you have very simple projects when you are just starting. Like, for example, if we have a ZZ pair and you're working with someone, how much you want, we do it 50-50 and that's done. But honestly, I don't think that's a realistic way of doing it, because as a business owner, you do have to pay admin costs, sales, marketing
Yeah,
costs. So that's
yeah,
one part that
yeah,
you should take out or allocate it to the budget, however you, in our
yeah, yeah.
example, we have 1,000, like, let's say how much 200 euros from this are going for that.
Sure.
Then the team costs 500. Let's say what's my number of hours in play that I'm involved in this project, and let's say will be 200, a
Yeah.
budget of 200 for that. So that means 100 euros will be the revenue of the company in that case. So it depends.
Okay.
There are two situations, one in which I will be working actively on the project, and actually
Yeah.
if I'm doing that with each client at this point, thinking back,
Yeah. Yeah.
you can't really stay not be involved. And one is the company. So depends how you treat yourself. Am I actually like act as part of the team, or am I just the umbrella, the company that
The
brings
business owner.
the
Yeah.
business owner? So I think this is
Yeah.
when you are calculating, you need to see what's my involvement in this. Am I just acting as quality insurance, if you want to call it like that? I'm making sure everything is delivered properly. We are fitting our company culture values,
Yeah.
respecting what is needed, and you act more like a PM if you want. Or
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
you actively contributing to the project? Are you creating the
The
strategy,
deliverables.
meeting?
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think
No,
there are
it's a
two
good point.
different things. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. Yeah. So I'm accustomed to what we call COGS in the US as a cost of goods sold. So it's all the things that you were talking about. So the cost of what you need to do. So all the overhead, all of those things. And
Yeah.
so in the US, I aim for 50% cost of goods sold. And so that's really where I hovered around for all those years. So I knew kind of where the thresholds were and whatnot, because it was a different corporate structure and setup and all of those things. So it's been, and I was an employee of my company in the S Corp, et cetera. So it's been part of the, is painful too hard? Challenging. It's been part of the challenge in sunsetting my company in the US and then setting up here in the Netherlands is, all the tax stuff, which I can't even go into at the moment. The tax situation is a situation with the US. But
Excuse me.
in any case, so I'm trying to figure out what are positive metrics I like to use as kind of guideposts as I'm rebuilding my company here. So I was just curious kind of how you approach that. So it
I will
sounds similar to what I did before. Just
honestly, I don't know how others are doing it. This is how I'm doing it, and I will launch. I'm very curious if others are keeping this structure, and I think it kind of depends on your expertise and like, are you acting as a business owner or a freelancer? Because I'm pretty sure there are a lot of freelancers that are, and especially in IT, that actually I know for a fact they are just charging an hourly rate and they don't really consider anything else. And
right.
when I think that's another topic. I think we can go in so many directions, because it kind of depends on the work you are doing and how you see yourself. Because there are a lot of ZZ payers, like freelancers. They are acting more like employees. At least in the Netherlands. Actually, it's everywhere, especially in the IT or specific like designers or software developers or app coders, so they will be hired, and this is the trend at this point. Bigger companies are hired them for a specific project, so it's a fixed amount of
Right.
time with a fixed amount of hours and a fixed amount of money per hour. So
Yep.
it's basically like you are an employee for a
Right.
particular, but you're paying
Right.
your taxes separately. So
Right.
that's one thing. And I feel actually a lot of people are approaching business like that. And that's fine.
Mm.
I'm not saying it's not fine, because if it works for you, it works for you. However, when
Hmm.
we do have agencies, so that means I have responsibilities for other people,
Yep.
and I have a
Right.
responsibility for a client where I can't deliver everything by myself because I'm lacking experience, or even if I have it, I don't have the time, or I know somebody else is better than
Yeah.
me to do that particular
Right.
task. And
Right.
honestly, sometimes you end up earning more money if you are delegating or getting someone,
Right.
because they are
Right.
better at that task. So they will spend
Right.
less time, and then the cost goes down. And
Right.
that
Right.
doesn't actually affect the quality. But
Right.
this is actually a business mentality. How do you see it? Where do you want to be?
Yep.
And
Yep.
honestly, the more I work, I don't want to give my creative work away, because this is what I love and this is what I'm good at. But what I'm seeing, the more
Yeah.
the company goes, you need to be more involved into building the relationship with your clients, still being creative on the project, but also bringing new clients. So that means your
Mm.
time, it's getting smaller and smaller, the time that you have to actively work on specific things. So that means
Hmm.
also you need to allocate time in finding the right people for the team that will deliver.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a circle,
Yep.
it's a vicious circle. And I
Yeah.
think the difference when you're pricing is, are you a freelancer or are you a company? Because the
Right.
pricing and the price structure differs depending on that.
Yeah. No,
Because when
absolutely.
you're a company, I do have a VA. She's actually not producing anything in terms of projects. But without her, I wouldn't be able to do my work, because she's helping
Yeah.
me tremendously on other things. So she's
So
a
it's
cost,
part of
but
the
actually
cost.
she's an asset.
Yep.
Exactly. But she's an
Right.
asset, because
It's a
without her, I can't.
support.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're
Interesting.
like the podcast we are doing. This is a cost for us, actually. But
Mm.
long
Yeah.
term
Yeah.
is also good for us, because it's branding for us, right? We are
Yeah.
sharing our
Interesting. Yep.
expertise. So how
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
you put this one in your cost?
Yeah. Interesting. And so, okay, the hourly piece. Yeah, I'm glad because I always felt, yeah, so I don't, I've never invoiced by the hour. I've never done that. It's been suggested before,
Me
but
neither.
I just never, and it always reminded, actually, one time years ago, I had somebody ask me um, if I would, put out some, share the word about their new business, right? And put out a couple of posts on social media and just share it with my network. And he
Mhm.
asked how much would I charge for that? And I was like, pal, I'm like, how deep are your pockets? It's going to cost you. And he said, well, what do you mean? How long does it take you to write one of those things on the social media thing? And I
Mm,
said, oh, that'll just take me a few minutes. I said, but you're missing the point. Ask me
yeah,
how long it took me to build all of those relationships. It's a
exactly.
long time. So that was for me when I was like, wait a minute, why would I ever charge for just the hour for something? Because so anyway, it's tricky.
That's not,
But then
yeah,
like it's
but that
for
also,
my work, I don't charge by the hour. But for my team, I need to know their hourly rate
exactly.
so I can calculate the cost. Yeah, yeah.
We do need something to relate to, because otherwise
Right.
it's impossible to make the price. But you made a very good point there. And actually that brings me like, are those clients that you want to work with? Because those type of
Yeah.
people, they will not actually value you. They will not really
Mm,
understand the value that you can bring. Because if they say
mm.
all you do, you are just writing a post, then go and
Yeah.
write it.
Yeah, but sometimes people just don't know. They just don't realize. And so in that case, they did become a client, but not to do the social media post. Instead, this is the funniest pivot ever. Instead, he was like, you're not going to believe this. Instead, he was like, Jillian, why don't you do a commercial for us instead? So they had a whole video crew. And then I got to do, they wanted me. I thought I was going to produce the commercial. And he was like, no, 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 I want you in it. So there I am in this commercial for this giant martial arts facility. It was fabulous. I should see if I can find the video. It's
I
so
do want
funny.
to see that one.
Yeah,
You in a
yeah,
kimono just doing some.
yeah.
I really
Yes,
want
I
to do
did.
that.
Yeah, good stuff.
But
Anyhow,
yeah,
but that was
that's
my
the thing.
attempt.
That's the thing. And what I'm noticing, I think we had an episode about this, or if not, we need to do one. What is marketing actually? I think we discussed about
Mm,
marketing and sales, but
yeah,
people
yeah,
don't really understand what's the purpose of marketing and what you're doing. And a lot of them are
sure.
expecting marketing, so you need to bring me clients, but it's not
Yeah.
as direct as that.
Mm,
And it's like, how do you run a business? Marketing is an
mm,
essential part of your business because it's the way you are presenting yourself and you are doing everything.
yeah,
And I don't
yeah,
know about you, but what I'm realizing, especially working with smaller clients, but I end up doing marketing, but also helping them on the business side, the structure of
yeah,
the
of
business, and
course. Yeah,
how
yeah,
do you do things? And you can't really take one outside of the other. And the more we work, so the more work experience we get, the more clients we have, and we learn from their business, and we take that out and we implement it. The richer our expertise is, and
yeah,
the more valuable our advice is. So how do you
yeah.
quantify that in a price?
Yes, exactly. And it becomes more relevant. And that customization is like everything. It's like, so I want to say it like, imagine if you could hire yourself and your team to as like to work on your company. Do you know what I mean? Do you ever think about
Yeah,
that? Like hire yourself. Like, yes, you do your own work in your team, but you guys are largely focused on client deliverables. But imagine to be able to hire yourself for all the things. It's like, wow, it is tricky when you start to go. It's like I learned that is not a drawback to the retainer model, but something that the retainer model brought to the surface for me is a challenge that I had to learn to navigate, which is the longer I worked with a client, as the years passed, the deeper I got into the organization. And then we had a boundary issue that I learned in a painful way a little bit. But like getting to the point where I knew way too much about the business. And I got to be much too deep. And so that boundary became difficult because at the end of the day, it's their company. And
yeah.
so but it
And you are
was
an external
great.
part. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, the external part. And so I think I might have mentioned it's like a recent, I feel like maybe the point I can look at and say, oh, that was the moment I learned it is when I found a solution to eject myself from a relationship like that, where I finally told the client, I had been suggesting for quite a while that it might be time for them to find another agency. I'd be happy to find one for them, and they did not go for that. And so I had to craft my pitch, and I came up with the perfect pitch, which was that I felt the time was it became time to shift gears because they couldn't, you can't really effectively outsource management and like leadership and accountability, that those things should be internal in an organization. And I told them, instead of paying me, to reallocate that money and to hire a business manager. And then I would help craft the job description, I would help with the interviews, I would help with the selection process and the onboarding. And lo and behold, they finally listened. And so that whole process happened. And I deliberately handed my largest client at the time away because it was the right thing to do for them and for me. Um, but yeah, so it's
but
that can happen. The more you work with somebody, you can get so deep and it's hard to eject, and that boundary can be tricky. So that's just a little bit of caution, and maybe it's just my experience, and that's what happened.
I think definitely in your case, what you described is you made the right decision, because there's a difference between being there and helping you and supporting you with a specific part. But when they see you, actually, you need to solve all my issues, it becomes toxic actually. And they
Yeah,
are the owners. So they should be the leaders, and they should be the one dictating the strategy. We are here to advise based
right,
on their
right.
input. So I never create a strategy. So my approach, as you know, is very human centric and has to
Yep,
represent the company culture and what they do. So that means everything that I work has to be a process of co-creation. So I need to understand
Hmm.
where are you and where you're heading as a company. I can't tell you where to grow, how to grow your company if it doesn't come to you, because it will never happen.
Mm.
You as the owner are the one that came up with the solution or service or whatever the business is doing. And your values need to be implemented, because you as a business owner are the face of the company, the one interacting with your clients
Yeah,
when
right.
you're delivering, right? So if I'm doing that in your example, that will not be the real face of the company, because it will be my values that I'm creating, not your values. So you as a business owner need to be incorporated there.
Yeah,
You need to
yeah.
dictate the direction. And based on that, we are creative and we're communicating and we are doing everything. But
Mm.
where do you, like, always I'm asking them, where are you heading? That was the goal. That's a very important thing, because without that one, we can't really create something that makes sense. And that needs to come from the client.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, I've had a lot of experience with it. I feel like I want to do sidebar and like go into that deeper to compare
Yeah.
notes because yeah, my experiences, I feel like yes to all the things you said, and I want to say yes and but that's for another day or another conversation. But yeah, so to dial back to this piece here about the client retention and whatnot. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts about how you're structuring things, or maybe what you're doing now? You've evolved some. Are you doing the same kind of approach now, like working with a team, all the stuff that we've talked about, just becoming more fine-tuned?
It becomes more fine-tuned. And I mentioned that we are restructuring and launching different things.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, what we are doing now, we are um, I'm trying but as you said, like, I need to see myself as a client. So we
Yeah.
are in process we are in process of simplifying things, because we realize we want to offer so much that it became overwhelming. So we do need to go back
Yeah.
to the drawing board and say no to different things and to restructure them. So this is actually what we are doing at this point, and hopefully by October we can communicate it to the entire world.
Mm.
uh, and we do have a couple of exciting things brewing. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but um, the core didn't really change, but we did fine tune the approach and how we structure and things like that. I I think I mentioned we did try to do like subscription model where you come and you have um, your time, but didn't really put a specific amount, so you have access to
Mm.
us unlimited, and that is
Yep.
becoming overwhelming. So
Yeah.
that was the mentality when I was starting and I was freelancing basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do need to make this I wouldn't say it's a mistake, because I did learn from it, but you do need to experiment and see what resonates with my client, what do they need, what actually makes sense for my business,
Mm-hmm.
and what's the price that I can ask. Because if you're saying like the marketing body, the service that we had where they had access to me nonstop, and the price, the first time I
Yeah.
launched it was 250 euros per month. That's nothing. And I was now thinking about it, it makes no sense. And we
Yeah.
increased it
Yeah.
to 600. But still,
Yep.
you would
Yep.
make, there were clients that were calling you every day, and then like, this is not sustainable. I'm actually losing
Yep.
money with this. So I do
Yep.
need to put a stop. I do need to see what I'm doing, and I do need to be more clear on the deliverables, because it does sound good,
Yeah.
and I do want them to have access to me all the time. But what's the limit?
Yep.
What's the
Yeah,
limit?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, I get
But
that.
but yeah, I what I learned, actually, what I did, because what I share now is because of my experience. At the beginning, I wasn't taking the company cost into account, and the company costs were
Yes.
lower actually, because you're just
Yes.
starting. What do you need? You need a computer and internet
Right.
access, right?
Right.
But the more
Right.
you grow, you need different tools, different subscriptions that help you make your work easier and more efficient. But those involve money. So all of those need to be reflected in the price
Yeah.
that you're asking for a client. So you're
Yeah.
learning and you're adding and you put different things. And
Yeah.
um, one advice that I will give to everyone when they're making a proposal is um, don't focus on the price actually. When you are working, focus on the quality. What are you delivering? What will the
Mm,
client get out of that? The moment I start switching and not thinking about the price because I was like, I need to give a discount and I will. So the moment I
mm,
actually became more confident in my skills and what I'm doing, things
mm,
changed. Now I like the last client we got, we send the offer. We never discussed the price or the discount or the entire conversation was about, okay, so how we do that? What are we getting? What's
mm,
the approach?
mhm,
And this is
mhm.
actually the type of conversations I want to have. The moment when we start discussing about price discounts or price or
Yep,
uh,
yep,
then for me it's like, okay, so let's understand, is it a cash flow that the client needs to discuss, or they don't understand the
yep,
price, and that's fine, we can work around it.
yep,
But if they
yep.
are just hunting for a way to get a discount, you need to think, is that really my client? Because if we are starting like this and the entire
Yeah.
period we are collaborating will be about money, I'm not sure that will be a good relationship. I'm not sure if our values align.
You're making me now think, oh, should I be prepared for that? Is that business? Is that like kind of the business landscape here in Europe or in the Netherlands that clients ask for a discount? Because I haven't had that before. Now I'm like, oh shoot, do I have to be prepared for people to
Mm,
ask for a discount?
some they will, some they not. I think it
Mm,
depends also on your attitude and how you enter it. Now
mm,
I'm not entering the discussion with that. I not
mm.
necessarily, and it depends on the client. But for
Okay.
me, that's also what's the word I'm looking for? A criteria, basically selecting my clients.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
the hardest is actually, do you want to actually extend no at the beginning, quite at the beginning of my business, to a client that sounded amazing, but we were still negotiating. Uh, like we agreed, and in the moment I had to sign the contract, everything in me was saying no, and I just said no
Mm,
in the end because everything was a fight about the money, and I was like, this
mm. Yeah.
this doesn't feel
No.
good. If
Right.
we are having this now, what will happen later on?
Right. For sure. So I actually was interviewed on another podcast a few years back, and it's on this specific topic of, um, yeah, selling, like how to sell on a retainer and how, or at least how I sold on a retainer. And it includes how, like the steps that I go through, how I go from prospect to onboarding a new client, and like
Mhm.
some very simple, very transparent tools. Like I use Google Docs and whatnot, but how I do my proposals and all of those things. Again, it's like things that I just did in the beginning when I was first starting, trying to find the simplest path and being super transparent. And I didn't know that these were like, it wasn't deliberate to be like a super savvy sales technique. It was not, but it turns out it became quite effective. So there's a whole podcast on it's an episode on the Agents of Change podcast. So I'll include
We need
that
to
link. It
include a
might
link.
be
Yeah.
useful for somebody. So what I've been working on in my like 2.0 version now is reconsidering basically every component of my business, right? Every facet. So
Mhm.
this is one of the big ones. And so I'm looking at different ways of testing, different ways of uh, yeah, invoicing and different ways of pricing things. And so I've been working, just recently started testing the pay what you want, that
Mm.
kind of model, to allow clients to be able to choose what the value actually was. So they'll be like,
Very
here's
curious
the,
to see how that will
yeah,
go.
yeah, me too. To be able to see where are we at, because like here's the way I've done it most recently was like, okay, so here is the agreed upon amount. And then with the last invoice, it was, okay, here's the agreed upon amount. Here's a
Mhm.
lower amount if you feel like it didn't meet the mark, or here's a higher amount if you feel like it was really over, like we over
Okay.
delivered. So I'm like trying to be, again, it's the idea of being super transparent and also seeing like maybe it's being foolish or trusting clients, or allowing clients to really show or to validate the amount of service that we provided, or how effective we were, etc. So I'm testing that. I don't know if that's going to stick around
did
long
the
term.
client pay it or not yet? I'm curious which of the three options the client went for.
Yeah, I should have looked at that, actually. That's a great question. Oh, you know what? I think I should know this. I'm pretty sure. I think they paid the amount that was agreed upon. I think they did, didn't they? Is that what they did? I'm pretty sure they did. But that was just this recent example. So I don't know.
I kind of
again,
expect that from this market, honestly, or the lower one.
That's what I'm wondering about. Is that indicative? And so as part of the testing, is that indicative of the location, like the geographic location, the industry, the size company? Is it like any of these things? So
definitely we're going to have
an
influence. Definitely we're going to have an influence. What I'm actually doing to help my clients, and especially the ones that are quite at the beginning, I'm more flexible in terms of, even if we agreed about the amount, we are splitting the payments or doing it in a longer period, so that enables them to produce the money. So we are focusing first on, you need to make this money, so what do we need to change in your business to enable you to make the money? And then we are doing the rest. And we are switching sometimes the order depending on the client, because again, my purpose is to grow with you, not to just get the money and leave.
Interesting.
So then we are switching, or sometimes it's okay, you're going to pay less now because you're waiting for an investment or clients or things like that, and you pay more at that period. Or sometimes we are actually pausing for, I have a client now, and I know we managed to actually double the income, and I know it will be fine and we're going to work, but we decided we're going to take 2 months break until he's stabilizing the financial side before moving forward. And I do know the client will going to come. So this is why I do have clients that we work for a very long period, but sometimes we do take breaks because of their personal situation or what is happening in the life. And I'm not afraid to do that, because I do see the value. Of course, there will be clients that you're never going to work again because there's life. But the majority, I would say 85%, I know they're coming back.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we've done that.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's we are humans. We do need to connect and understand where are we and how can we help each other. Because that's the whole thing. At least that's my philosophy. We are here to help you. Our mission is to enable you to follow your passion. So that's my goal here, not to just go for the financial side. So I think discussing about the financial side, I see it as two sides, and sometimes it's hard to reconcile this, because one is the very pragmatic one. We are a business, we do need to make money. This is why a business exists. But the other one is, I have a business that I want to work and represent my values and bring me joy. This is why I'm doing it. Otherwise, I'm going to go and just get a job, right? And how do you reconcile those? Because sometimes can be different, but you do need to get to that. Where do they merge?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I just wanted to say one thing quickly. You reminded me of it's kind of like a little bit of a hybrid model that has worked before as well. So when you're talking about adjusting or splitting up the cost over a period of time. So what we have also done, I would say successfully, I believe, is again having clients with their baseline retainer. But then if they wanted, so there's an example, we did a website for a client a few years back, and I think it was like 8,000. So 8,000. And so rather than invoice them like send them an extra 8,000, we just like, okay, so why don't we just divide that up over 6 months? And so we just added that on to their retainer. Because we already had established that retainer kind of, so they were just accustomed to it. So then we did an add-on. So that worked well. And then that helps, because then the client, they're get used to an increased line item in their budget.
And it's easier for them to pay that than to just get 8K out of their pocket now. It depends. And also what a lot of clients don't understand, because they say, I just split it, but we do have our own, even if some are employees or not employees, but we do have our responsibility to pay the bills towards our collaborators as well. So
Yes,
it's,
yes.
you do need to find that balance, and we do need to pay our rent and our mortgages
Mm,
and live.
yep,
So
yep,
it's a fine tune. I'm
yep.
looking at the time. I think this will be one of our longest episodes.
Imagine that, Veronica. See? Yeah, yeah.
Who would have thought?
I told you it would be fun. See? Numbers are fun. Yeah,
Numbers are fun. Yes.
yeah.
One advice that I will do give to every business owner, it doesn't matter if you're a freelancer or have employees, you do need to have a good grasp on your numbers. So just be very
Yes, yes,
critical how much
yes.
everything costs. Get an Excel or whatever works for you and just write down what it is. And I'm guilty that I'm sometimes behind with that because let's
Yeah.
be honest, it's not sexy. It's not the best part. You don't want to do that. There are some people that love it. It's not my favorite part, but you do
Mm,
need to
mm,
understand it because then you know, what do I need to do? What's the next step? That do I need to push sales? Do I need to stay and um, focus on my clients? Or sometimes we just need a break. Let's be honest,
mm,
we are humans.
mm,
So
mm.
looking at the numbers, you see where you are, and at least for me, gives me a little bit of peace, or actually tells me I need to speed it up, or dictates my rhythm actually.
Yeah. It's a really interesting one. I love that you brought that up. That was one thing I would also recommend. But I don't mean to open up another can, but I'll just state this then, and you can add if you want. One surprising kind of, um, yeah, I don't know what to call it, uh, situation for me is I have, maybe it's just the clients that I have attracted, or maybe it's the referrals that I've gotten. It seems that a number of, I've had the challenge of a number of business owners not really being super interested in looking under the hood of their business and
Mhm.
really kind of digging into the data and the numbers that comprise their business. And so I think it's
Yeah.
part of my thought with doing this episode is to try to really, I don't know if we can come up with the magic words, but to highly, highly encourage business
Yeah.
owners, whether you like it or not. I mean, certainly you can outsource that and or have a fractional CFO or some consultant that can help. But I think
I
it
think it's a
really,
difference. You
no
need
matter
to see the numbers.
the business owner, maybe they're not going to love it, maybe they're not going to be the one that's getting their hands dirty with wrangling the data and such, but I feel like it's so critical for business owners to know the numbers,
Yeah.
and also probably good to have another party, can be internal and or an external person, to look at it and help strategize and point
Yeah.
out blind spots and that kind of thing, because the data is what tells us, and knowing our numbers is so critical to be able to see, because I can't tell you how many times it's like working with a client, tell me about something like, oh, how did that work, what were the results, oh, it worked great, and then I ask, according to what? Is it like, oh yeah, it
Yeah.
worked great, or is it like, oh, because two people told you it looks good, it worked great, like how do you know, is
Yeah.
there any data? So it's like the data and like the finance piece are very connected, and so it's like so critical,
Yeah.
to be able to know those and have resources in place to address those. Um,
No,
and
I
then
totally agree with you.
yeah. The other thing I just was going to float out there, we don't have to talk about it, but we can perhaps revisit it.
I think we need
We were
another
talking,
episode.
yeah, but just to throw it out there, so we had talked about ways to structure, an hourly versus project versus kind of retainer model. We talked about value based. We talked about the pay what you want situation. I think there's also another way to couch the services and deliverables and the financial models is in how your business, is it like a B2B or a B2C situation? And I think there's some opportunities to explore either of those, for every business. So we
Yeah.
could perhaps revisit that. But yeah, my I guess final suggestion, or is like my what's top of mind for me, and like the biggest challenge for me in this over the period of years I've been a business owner, is always accounting for my own time. It's a
Yeah.
tricky one. It's
And we tend
pervasive
not to do
because,
it. We tend not to do
yeah,
it
it's really
actually,
hard
especially
because
at the beginning.
all of a sudden, yeah, I'll be like, all of a sudden have this whole idea for a client, and I'll go to my handy dandy whiteboard and draw it out, work on it for a little bit. and it was like, oh, that just happened, but I have to make a note, like, okay, so that was be able to see what my time is
Yeah.
and what am I spending time on. So that's been, I'm better when it's like scheduled and blocked and whatnot. So there have been different tactics to do this over time. But for sure, that's been I would say, greatest challenge. So I don't know, just speaking candidly. So
I think
that's
we
me.
need another episode discussing on how we approach client work and how do we structure the work. And
Mm,
then we can also tie it into the pricing because they are connected, even if we like it or
yeah.
not.
So
But
like client work, the pricing structure, and like a day in the life, like how do we structure our days?
yeah,
Interesting. Fair. Cool.
listeners, do you like that idea? Right. In the
Yeah, yeah,
comments. I
yeah.
do. I think honestly, this is one of our longest, and I feel we just scratched the surface, and I could stay for another
Yeah.
half a day discussing about it and sharing different things because you trigger different
Mm,
other ideas. But
right.
I think we should pause it for the time being because otherwise no one
Probably.
will gonna want to to listen. It's too
Yes.
long.
Agreed. Agreed.
um, so thank you to everyone for listening. And I'm very curious, how do you approach the financial side? Are you, as Jillian said, actually, I do experience a lot of people are afraid of the numbers. But the idea is
Mm,
if you look at the numbers, you may be positively surprised. So
yeah.
don't choose ignorance. That's the bottom
Right.
line.
Yeah. Don't
Because
choose ignorance. That's going to be the topic. I mean, the title of this episode. Don't choose ignorance. Sorry. I
on
love it. It's good.
but if you know what is working and what is not working, you can adapt it. But if you don't
Right.
know, then you'll be like a hamster on a wheel, right? You're just gonna go
That's
round
right.
and round and round and just do things that probably make you extremely unhappy and miserable.
Hmm.
But you can't change anything until you don't know what you need to change. And by looking at the
Right.
numbers, okay, I can focus on what I like, or if this is what I don't like and I'm not really good at this, I can actually externalize or bring people to help me. And it can be
Right.
as simple as just externalizing finance or
Mm.
just adding someone to do a task that takes you way too much time and you're cutting the cost in half. So
Yes. Yes.
there are so many possibilities once that you actually know the data.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so with that being
Marvelous.
said, anything else that you want to add before we say goodbye to our audience for now?
No, I'm happy. I feel like it's a great conversation and I appreciate the time and chatting with you and anybody else that happened to listen. Thank you. I hope it was helpful.
Thank you.
But yeah, no, great conversation. Thanks.
Thank you. Till next time,
All right.
everyone. Bye.
Cheers.